a unicorn in less than 2 years. Your first reaction to this massive Series C round of funding, what it means for Udaan and Indian startups in particular?
Sure. Look, I think financing events are really milestones on the way to building companies, and I think this is an exciting milestone. But it is just a milestone. There's a lot more to do, but it is recognition, I think, of the opportunities in the B2B space, of the scale that can arise from leveraging internet technology in some of these white spaces, and of course, the quality of the team here. And what they've accomplished so far.
Right. And, what would you say to critics or skeptics who think that this is perhaps too much growth or too much funds in, too less period of time, less than 2 years? Will it sort of increase the weight of expectations on a startup that's just 2 years old? What would you say to them?
Well, look, I think when you have digital companies that are going after large white spaces, there is a real prize to being a company that wins the space, especially in business models that are marketplace-oriented and have network effects. There is significant benefit to not only being the first mover, but being the company that achieves scale, liquidity on a platform like this. The more buyers you have, the more sellers will be there. The more sellers that are there, the more selection and the better the pricing, and therefore the more buyers that you attract. And so I think, whether it's in Udaan's case or in the case of other companies going after large market opportunities, you'll find that they do capitalize themselves well, and that is part of the strategy ultimately to win a space.
Right, right. If I look at the B2B space today, Bejul, some of the older players include the likes of a Power to SME and an India Mart. Some of the startups that perhaps Udaan competes with would include a ShopX and Off Business. What really sets Udaan apart? Is it the fact that they've managed to perhaps scale up faster than any of their competitors in this category? Lakhs of sellers on their platform in a month, in just about 2 years. Would that be the differentiator compared to competition? The way they've managed to scale up their business in a space that has a lot of potential.
Yeah, look, I think all the companies you've mentioned are fantastic companies. And I think at a high level, it looks like all B2B is the same and one clubs it into the same bucket. But in reality, the strategies and the approaches targeted by each of these companies are different, and they're attacking different parts of the market. So I don't think this is about Udaan necessarily, being a better company than any of the others. I think just the strategy that they have employed, which is a true marketplace approach, the work they've done on the credit and logistics side, and obviously the scale that they've achieved, I think is the reason for the success that they're having. But again, I would say that it's targeted at a different opportunity set than some of the other companies that you mentioned.
Right. And Bejul, do you see focus increasing in this segment? Because we're not just talking about startups anymore, but B2B is a space where you will have an Amazon business, a Metro Cash and Carry, larger rivals such as Walmart, Alibaba. People are talking about a Reliance that is looking to enter this space. So how is this going to pan out? We've seen this happening in the e-commerce, B2C e-commerce space, where it started out with startups, then you have international giants, and then you have a homegrown Reliance, all of them really facing off right now. Is a similar scenario going to play out in B2B as well? And, how do you see this playing out eventually?
I think it's a great question. And I think the reality is that all large markets worth winning will see high competitive intensity. I don't expect this will be any different. Some of the companies that you've named. The only point I would make is that B2B commerce in India it's extremely nuanced. This is not a simple problem to solve. Understanding traders at the ground level is very different than applying a B2C strategy that has been played out in other markets. And so I think that this competition or this market will be won by the companies that understand their constituents best, that build solutions that are really tailored to and unique to India. And I think in that respect, Iran is writing the playbook for the first time for a market like India. This is not a replica of a business that has been built elsewhere. It's being built first principles from the ground up, and I think that will give the company some real defensibility as others enter the space.
Right. Before we let you go, Bejul, this is the fourth unicorn to come out of India in 2 months. I mean, you might call it a financing event, but if I look at it, it's a huge shot in the arm. You've had Swiggy, Policy Bazaar, Freshworks, and now Udaan. It's an interesting mix of two B2C players, two B2B players, and this comes months after the Flipkart Walmart deal, which is probably the biggest exit for any VC in India. How do you view all these events together? Is 2018 perhaps a very good year as far as the Indian startup ecosystem is concerned, minus some of the irrational exuberance that we saw in the 14-15 time period?
Yeah, see, Chandra, we've been investing in India for a decade. And so I think a decade when we started investing was perhaps too early with hindsight, but the promise was always there. When you have internet technology hitting a market as large as India, significant value will be created. I mean, the digital economy in this country is being built. It is being built now, and it will continue to be built over the next decade. So just as we saw with the physical economy or the infrastructure economy getting built in the first part of sort of 2000, 2010, we're now seeing the digital economy get built. And when that happens in a country as large as India, I don't think we should be surprised by the value creation opportunity that exists. And I think what you've just referred to is really the proof of that. Policy Bazaar has been around a long time, but they've navigated themselves to a leadership position. And so I think we will see more of this. There has been an acceleration over the last 18 months. I would say two catalysts for that. One is obviously Geo, and the second is reforms like GST, which have led to an accelerated pace of digitization, especially on the small business side. So I would say those two events have provided more acceleration, but this trend line, in our view, was inevitable once the country started adopting digital technology.